We have with us today 4 of North America's top workplace experts to help you learn how you can improve your business right now in this new world of work. My name is Jerry Gitchell of Leverage Unlimited, and I'll be your host today. Now, I'm going to try to stay away from the well-worn phrases we've all heard over the last few weeks to describe this new environment. You know the phrases I mean. Whatever we call it, it has exposed the vital importance of culture and how it impacts people and organizations. We want to get right into the meat of today's event, and we're going to do that with what I call a lightning round. Now, our lightning round, it starts real simple. We're going to have questions and answers, both from you as well as the attendees today. So this first one is going to be, gentlemen, the first lightning round question is, in 20 seconds or less, what do you think most leaders get wrong about workplace culture? Sanjay.
2 things. Number one is they don't think it's that important. And then when they realize that it is important, it's kind of too late. So it's not a priority.
Richard.
Well, I think some leaders may acknowledge that organization culture has an impact on employees, but I think they sometimes underestimate the impact that it has on their customers. Many people choose one organization over a competitor, not just because of what they sell, but because of the culture in which it provides their products or services.
Jeff, let's go with you next.
Well, in deference to my colleagues, they know already that I don't love the word culture. I like to think of it more as the climate. Culture, some of you work for organizations that are older than 50 years. I don't want to change the culture. I want to look at the climate, like the climate outside, it's changing all the time. So let's look at the climate of the organization.
Thank you. That's question 1. Gentlemen, question number 2.
I think we forgot Mike on that one.
We forgot Mike, and
what am I, chopped liver here?
He's the best one of all. We have to hear from Mike.
We'll hear from you twice next time, Mike. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Well, I agree. I think leaders underestimate just how critical culture is. I think everybody pays lip service to it. They say it's important. I mean, who's not going to say it's important? But they grossly undervalue just how important it is to be intentional about your culture.
Thank you. Limiting it to 3 words. Now you get 3 words maximum. If you had to choose just one overarching value to guide a business's culture, what would that be, Jeff?
Be more vulnerable.
Easy. Sanjay.
Focus on strengths.
Michael.
Trust. I think if you don't have trust, you don't have anything. You don't have customers. Employees need to trust that the leaders have their best interests in heart. Employers have to trust their employees. If you don't have trust, you don't have open and honest communication. You don't have creativity. You don't have anything.
Michael, you did have a 3-word part, didn't you, Michael?
We have to teach Michael how to count, but okay.
I thought the answer was in 3 words or less. Then I was expanding on it.
Oh, okay.
Richard, what are your 3 words? We have time.
Employee-centric equals customer-centric. Okay, they're hyphenated, but it's still only 3 words.
It's still only 3 words. Thank you. Our next question. If you could name just one company you think gets their culture right, pretty close to right, who is it? We'll start with you, Richard.
I would nominate Wegmans Supermarkets. They operate in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic states. They're very employee-centric, and they're simultaneously customer-centric. Since COVID-19, they've increased all their hourly employees' rates by $2 an hour, and they've always had a very sensible paid sick leave policy, as in, don't come to work if you're sick. And now it's no questions asked, no doctor's note required, and a company spokesperson said, yeah, there may be a few who will take undue advantage of that, but far more good will be done for our employees and our customers than harm will be done to the company.
Very good. Let's go with Jeff next, please.
I came to mind is Zappos. You know, unfortunately they were not too long ago they were purchased by Amazon, so the jury's still out. But love the culture and love the focus on employees and love the focus on having fun.
And Sunjay, which company from you?
I think it goes through waves. So at one point in time, one company, we love them, and then 6 months later, we hate them. But what comes to mind immediately is Amazon. In their last quarterly earnings, they took their $4 billion worth of profits. And I love what Jeff Bezos said. He said, investors, you may want to have a seat when I tell you this, but we're reinvesting that $4 billion into transition and making it a safe workplace and getting testing for the employees and all that sort of thing. So here's an example of an organization that's putting profit second and culture first.
Thank you, Sunjay. Mike.
Beryl Health Call Centers based in Dallas, Texas, Bedford, Texas, actually. In many healthcare markets, their employee turnover rate is more than 400%. Beryl's is about 12%, and they make 5 times the profit of their nearest competitors. They are focused relentlessly on culture and customer service. Their human resources manager, you gotta love a company who has a human resources manager with the title, the Queen of Fun and Laughter.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. And our final question for this first lightning round. Amidst all of the difficulties, tragedies, and hardships of COVID-19, what's the most positive thing to come from this so far? Sunjay?
I think it's kind of the gift of time. So we've been given a pause on the rat race and to step off that wheel and start questioning some of the things that we think are important. For the people that had tons of money, if you can't buy anything and the stores are closed, maybe it gets you to re-question what sort of the objectives are. There's a quote that I love that says, too many people climb the ladder of success only to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. So here's an opportunity for us to step back and go, are we climbing against the right wall?
Richard?
I'd say one of the best things to come from this so far is a greater appreciation for healthcare workers. I mean, not only on the part of patients and their families, but a generally greater appreciation from the community at large, as a lot of people are coming to recognize that healthcare workers are putting themselves at greater risk than almost any other profession. And so many of them have gone above and beyond anything they ever imagined that they were signing up for just to do their jobs.
Very good, very good. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. That was the first lightning round for everyone. What we're going to do is I'm going to have all of you stay right where you are for just a moment, if you would, please. Let me share the agenda so that everybody knows what page we're on. Now, in just a moment, we're going to hear from a 5-minute presentation from each of our speakers today on a specific topic in the context of organizational culture. And there'll be some fun throughout today's learning event as each of our speakers comes back for some Q&A from the audience, another lightning round, and another opportunity for them to speak towards the close of this gathering. Finally, each speaker will share one quick closing idea, and each speaker will offer everyone a free resource. I'll say that again. We'll offer everyone a free resource that you can download to help you with your work. All of us are asking questions and are looking for answers, and anyone attending this meeting may submit questions either to the whole panel or to a specific speaker. Now, you'll notice on your screen, audience, there is a button called Q&A. If you click that Q&A, it will pop up a place where you can ask a question. We hope you'll use that, and then later on in the program, we're going to go ahead and answer as many of those questions as we have time for. But let's start by asking you, the audience, a question. And we'll take several polls during our time today, but here comes the very first poll. And gentlemen, you can actually participate in this poll if you wish. Do you typically work remotely most of the time? 40% have answered, 50% have answered. 75% have answered. Some people are not necessarily going to answer it. I think we've got just about everybody who's ready to answer. We'll give you more seconds. Time's up. And here are the results. So we have yes, 22%, no, 78%.
Very interesting. Cool.
Quite a difference, isn't it? What we're used to. Well, thanks for participating in our first poll. I'm going to go ahead and put that away for now. And as a matter of fact, I think what we'll do is we'll actually put not just that away, but gentlemen, I'm going to have you go take a seat because our first person up today, it's going to be Mike. So if you don't mind, gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and have you go take a seat. If you would, get ready, Mike. It's going to be you any minute. There we go, Mike. And you're ready to go. Let me introduce you because I've got a great introduction here for you. Why not use it? Michael Kerr is a Canadian Hall of Fame speaker who in non-pandemic times travels the world researching, writing, and speaking about inspiring workplace cultures and businesses that leverage their humor resources to drive outrageous results. Michael, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Thanks so much, everybody. When we talk about this topic of culture and the marriage of one of the topics I love talking about, humor in the workplace, one of the companies that comes to mind for me is Argus Industries, located in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Argus has this wonderful mantra that I think everybody on this call should steal, and the mantra is this: work is hard enough as it is without making it any harder. That's a great mantra for all of us to steal. And Argus takes that mantra seriously. They have all sorts of contests and games. They connect with the family members of their employees, which is so important to do if you want to build a strong rocking culture. They do theme days. Some of them are dirt simple. Monochromatic day, for example, where everyone just has to wear some combination of black and white. And they have all sorts of rituals and traditions to bring a little fun and humor into the workplace. My favorite one has got to be starting on December 1st, an employee shows up with a gorilla costume and he hides somewhere in their manufacturing plant or their front office, waiting to scare the heck out of a coworker. Well, another coworker secretly videotapes the transaction of all these, and a lot of them are blue collar guys, a lot of these big burly blue collar guys screaming, "Ah!" when they see the gorilla. And then they create this montage video that's become a huge hit at their year-end party. And talking to the CEO of Argus, he said, you know what's so cool about this tradition, Mike, is starting on December 1st, when the gorilla thing kicks in, all of our employees come into work with a certain amount of fear and trepidation, right where we want them. But what a goofy tradition. Argus Industries has a phenomenal record of growth. They have ridiculously low employee absenteeism rates. And in the last 10 years or so, they have almost a 0% employee turnover rate, almost 0%. That is unprecedented. Now, let's be clear. They do not have close to a 0% employee turnover rate because a gorilla shows up starting on December 1st. They have close to 0% because they recognize that culture drives success. They recognize that it is their number one competitive advantage. And I want to stress that to you. Your culture is your number one competitive advantage. Argus just feeds off that culture, supports that culture through a lot of fun. And that's one of their core values, but they still very much relentlessly focus on culture. I've interviewed hundreds of leaders around the globe. And one of the questions I always ask is, what's been more important to your success, your strategy or your culture? 98% have said, it's our culture. Culture is everything. And by culture, I just mean how you do the things you do. It's the unique set of rituals, traditions, values, behaviors that make you, you, and different than everyone else. It is the climate, as Jeff said. It's the atmosphere, the smell of the place, the feel of the place. And it drives success because it is something that affects every aspect of your organization. A Harvard business study, and one of literally hundreds of studies, found that how an organization hires, trains, and treats its employees, in other words, how they focus on their culture intentionally, creates organizations that grow by anywhere from 30% to 300% over their competitors. But what great leaders get, what I hope you get, is that Great cultures don't just happen. You can't fake it. You can't go buy your culture at IKEA. Even if you did, you would have parts left over and you probably wouldn't understand the instructions. So you have to be intentional about building your culture day in and day out. That means hiring for culture. That means training with your culture in mind. That means making decisions with your culture in mind. And that means especially being aware now of your culture, because as per the title of this presentation, culture matters now more than ever. We know from studies from past shockwaves like the 9/11 event or the 2008 financial meltdown, that those organizations that have strong cultures were the ones that survived those downturns, that came out of them faster than other organizations. And one of the keys to building a resilient culture that I'm going to come back later on in this presentation and talk about is bringing that fun, that playfulness, that sense of humor into your culture in as many ways possible, because we know humor helps drive a successful culture, but it also reflects a successful culture. Thank you, Jerry. Back to you. Jerry, I think you might be on mute.
Well, that won't work, will it? I'm going to go ahead and put up, thank you, Michael. And let's go ahead and start out that second poll. If you do not typically work remotely most of the time, do you think you will continue to work remotely most of the time when this is over? It's kind of the opposite of that. We've got 50% have voted so far. %, we're flying along here. Wow, this one is skewed also. So if you do not typically work remotely most of the time, do you think you will continue to work remotely? And wildly said, no. Overwhelmingly, 80% said no, they would not be working remotely in the future. Well, that's the end of poll number 2. Let's put that away. And let's bring in our very next person, the Jeff. Let me tell you about Jeff. Hi, Jeff. Let me introduce you properly. Well, I've got a great introduction here for you. Jeff Tobe is an international thought leader on creative thinking for the customer patient experience. The author of a popular book, Coloring Outside the Lines, which I have a copy of. He helps people understand their creativity and use it to their advantage every day. Hello, Jeff. You have the floor.
Thanks, Jerry. You know, first of all, I can't speak as quickly as Mike Kerr can, but I am glad that he talked about having fun as part of your culture. You know, I think that translates to being more creative. We can't see you as participants today, but I would ask you the question, how many of you truly believe you are one of the most creative people you know? When I ask that of live audiences, only about 10% say they are. And I truly believe that everybody's more creative. You know, when were we most creative in our lives? When we were kids, right? So it didn't just fall off. I mean, it's there inside every one of us. And I truly believe that using that creativity in your culture today, especially with what's going on, can set you apart from everybody else who professes to be in the same profession, the same industry, the same business as you. You know, it's all about perspective. I once heard a sales trainer say, if you see the world through your customer's eyes, you'll see the way your customer buys. And I love that, because substitute the word customer for patient, for member, for student, it doesn't matter. I think that being creative is seeing the world right now through our customer's eyes. You know, there was a study done, I'm going to take you way back for a minute. There was a study done in 1988, before some of you were probably even born, SMU Business School in Dallas, Texas. And they studied change in major industries and professions in the United States and Canada. Here's what they found. In general, if you were in business in 1988, you went through a major change in the way you do what you do every 3 years. So the study said that by 1991, something was going to change. The reason I take you back so far is because they've redone the study now, I think, 4 times. And about 2 years ago, they found that 3 years had been reduced to 7 months. 7 months. Now that we've gone through this, what we're going through now, I'm wondering what that would be. It would be just a month, right? Things are changing so rapidly, I can't think of a better reason to color outside the lines. So one of the things that I wanted to do today was give you 3 questions for you and your team to consider. They're great questions to ask, and just truly listen to the answers. The first one that I ask when I work one-on-one and when I consult in the customer experience with organizations, no matter their size, is why is change so threatening to so many people? The second one is, how do we get past the, but that's the way we've always done it syndrome, as I like to say? And the third one, how do we get people to move outside of their comfort zone? I think these 3 questions are vital right now when we look at our culture and the new normal, which I know we're avoiding saying, but whatever that means. But I want to focus on number 1. Why is change so threatening to so many people? And everything is changing right now. You know, I think that the number 1 thing I hear, the answer I hear is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure. I once heard that fear is just an acronym for false evidence appearing real. I'd rather think of it as face everything and rise. I heard a speaker say that. Mistakes are just a necessary byproduct of the entire creative process. You know, Benjamin Franklin said, the man who does things may make mistakes, but he never makes the biggest mistake of all, doing nothing. And so I think fear is the biggest hindrance to successful risk-taking. It's like a wall. It kind of limits your view and creates a barrier to your creative being. But break through the wall and you'll find your creative genius kind of living behind that wall. I want to finish with a story when it comes to fear. There's an old American, Native American story about a 60-foot, 2-headed snake. And very scary. And if we're afraid, the snake gets bigger, and it grows bigger and larger in our minds due to fear. But if we stand up to our 2-headed snake, we look it in the eye, it sees its own reflection, and it slithers away. I like that, because I think right now we need to stand up to our own 2-headed snake of fear. Finally, I believe that there's always more than one right answer. I think we have to accept the fact that right now we've got to start looking at things from a whole new perspective. And I think that just looking at it from a different perspective, we can kind of see the business through our customers' eyes, not ours.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a very serious poll question. I hope you're ready for this one. How much weight have you gained since sheltering at home went into effect? Now, we are letting the panelists weigh in on this. 30%. We're almost at 80%. We'll stop this as soon as we hit 80. A couple more votes. Oh, we're so close. And here comes the results. I hope you're ready for this. Wow, nothing? That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. All right, well, enough of that. Let's go ahead and introduce our next speaker. Richard Hadden. Hello, Richard.
Hi.
Let me tell everybody about you, since you're one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. We almost look alike even. I'm going to welcome back Richard Hadden right now with some practical, doable ideas for leading and maintaining your organization's culture in these days when fear is high, as we just learned from Jeff. and people are separated and scattered both geographically and otherwise. Now you know why I'm not the speaker. It's all up to you, Richard. You have the floor.
Thank you, Jerry. Imagine, if you will, for just a minute, that I were to ask you to consider changing your personality. Not just some behavior, but your personality. Now, we'd have to have a long conversation before you'd be willing to consider that. And culture is like an organization's personality, and it doesn't usually change rapidly. But two things that can threaten an organization's culture are, one, a traumatic event, and two, a significant change in the working environment. We've had both of those conditions in the last 6 or 8 weeks. And so unless our cultures are strong and well-defined, they're going to be vulnerable. And culture, just like viruses, spreads through personal contact. When we reduce personal contact, it reduces the spread of the virus, which is good, very, very good. But it also puts a kink in our ability to spread and maintain our culture. So just like we've adapted to work without personal contact, we've got to learn to adapt to maintain our culture without personal contact, at least for now. Leaders have to be the ones to define the culture, to communicate it, and to model it. But they have to do it in a very different way today. And all of the skills in a leader's toolbox, I think the one that is probably the most exposed when leading from a distance is communication. You simply have to communicate more in a remote setting than you might when you're all working together. Now, communicating more does not mean having more meetings. It means making more meaning. So I've been talking with a lot of leaders over the last couple of months, and here is the theme that I'm hearing from the ones with the best track record of making meaning. Number one, they're careful not to assume that everyone understands things the way they do, so they check for understanding frequently. Secondly, they're spending more time communicating, especially one-on-one with the people they work with, more time than they did before. And they're becoming better listeners. They're very aware of the need to shut up and listen rather than just waiting to talk. Now, assuming that your culture recognizes the vital link between employee engagement and organizational success before COVID-19, I want to talk very quickly about 4 things that you need to consider if you want to maintain and strengthen that culture. The first of those is that fear and engagement do not mix. There's a lot of fear out there. The degree to which you are concerned with doing your job varies inversely with the degree to which you are concerned about losing your job. As leaders, we have to say everything we can say and do everything we can do honestly and truthfully to minimize that fear. Next is trust. We say we trust our folks, but working remotely really tests the strength of our trust. Here are 2 things leaders need to do with a remote workforce. Number one, you're going to have to trust more, and it will be uncomfortable. So we need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Now, secondly, we have to prepare our people to work with greater autonomy. You'll notice I didn't say give people more autonomy. Autonomy minus preparation is called abandonment. So we need to be able to give people the preparation to be more autonomous. Third, performance management. It's a huge challenge with a remote workforce. And people have been asking me over the last 6 or 8 weeks, how do I know they're working? And my answer is, how did you know before? We've been talking for a long time about results-based management. Now is the time to use it if you're not already. So we have to ask a new set of questions. Are you looking for activity or results? Are you looking for attendance or outcome? Are you looking for time in front of the computer or impact on your customers? And finally, we know that engagement thrives when there's a sense of community in the workplace, but it struggles in isolation. Community is really, really important for culture. Think about it. It's a relatively easy thing to do to leave a job or to leave a company, but it's altogether different if you're talking about leaving a community. So here's some quick ideas that I've seen used in the last couple of months to support community. One you've already heard and perhaps already indulged in, and that's a virtual happy hour. Some of you probably overindulged in those virtual happy hours, but if that fits your culture, go for it. Secondly, happy hour or not, some teams are having virtual lunch hours. It's a chance to connect socially, just like you did in the company dining facility. Third, I know a leader who has asked someone to kind of keep up with all the personal stuff that usually gets shared in an office environment, things like babies and graduations and birthdays and that kind of thing. And, you know, the kind of stuff that people would know about if they were just casually talking at work, again, to help build community. And finally, is a virtual buddy system. Yeah, let people pair themselves up with a coworker. This would be the person that they would ordinarily back in the office pop their head over the cubicle and ask for help or insight or share a perspective. This just gives a little structure, and it provides someone else who can ask on a regular basis, how are you doing? The virus has put distance between us. It is the leader's job to bring people together.
Well, thank you, Richard. That was fabulous. I'm going to go ahead and have you take a seat, and we're going to launch our number 4 poll. Here it is. Question 4 is, what new skills or qualities have you developed or improved during this? It's multiple choice. There we go. We need that. 50% have voted. And video conferencing absolutely is taking the lead. I like the idea that communication is high up on our list. We are almost there. Here is the results. The survey said, as you can see, video conferencing was the highest of almost all of these. That's absolutely fabulous. All right, let's go ahead and move to our 4th speaker. Let me bring him out so you can see him, have him stand up here. Sunjay Nath is a Canadian Hall of Fame speaker, travels globally sharing insights on leadership and performance. He's authored several books, including his trademark, the 10-80-10 Principle, a framework that helps individuals and teams improve performance. Sunjay, you're going to talk about one of the greatest benefits that come from the crisis. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Jerry. First of all, I like a lot of people, I had to kind of corral my kids and bribe them with screens while I came up here to do this call, hoping that they wouldn't make noise. And so one of my kids asked me, he said, Dad, what's the call about? And I said, it's about culture. And he said, like culture, like you're part Indian? And I said, no, it's organizational culture. And he said, well, what's that? And I kind of pondered it, and I had to think about it for a while. And the best way I could explain it to him is I said, it's like school spirit for the workplace. And he said, why is that important? And so I said, well, that's actually what I'm going to talk about. And the reason why it's so important is because it depends, it's going to be reflective of how people are going to deal with this. Are they going to look at this as an opportunity, or are they going to look at this as a victim? And it reminds me of a story that when my eldest son was first learning to walk, we had a plant in our room that was roughly, the pot of the plant was roughly the size of him. And he would kind of waddle over there, and he would get to the plant, to the base of the plant, and he would start eating the dirt. Now, in all of the parenting magazines I've ever read, apparently it's a bad move to let your child eat dirt. So in my infinite wisdom, what I did is I took the tree and I kind of stuffed it in a corner of my room. And next to the tree, I put a sofa. And in between the sofa and the other wall, I wedged one of his big toys that we used to call Toy Mountain. And what it was, it's just a big plastic mountain that he would drive cars around. So the logic would be he'd kind of see the tree and he'd start waddling over, and he would get sidetracked with Toy Mountain and start playing with the cars. And that's exactly what happened. And I felt like, you know, I'm a genius, I'm parent of the year, I'm so clever, until one day, maybe 3 months later, now that my son is a little older, a little stronger, a little more mature, and a little more capable, I walk into the room and he has waddled over, and he's big enough and strong enough now that he's actually perched himself on top of Toy Mountain, where not only can he reach down and grab the dirt, which he's eating, he can now reach up and grab the leaves. And what he reminded me of was a really important fundamental lesson, which was this, is with the right understanding and the right learning and the right knowledge, the things that serve as roadblocks in one point in our lives will be stepping stones in others. And that's what organizational culture means. If you're part of an organization where people get to go to work rather than have to go to work, they're going to look at the whole COVID-19 thing as a stepping stone, as an opportunity to move forward. And if not, you're going to look at it as victims. Oh, poor me. Oh, no, and now I have to telecommute. Oh, and this sucks, and the security here, and I don't have this. And they're going to look for opportunities to complain rather to embrace the wonderful opportunity. And the biggest opportunity, and I alluded to this earlier, was this gift of time. I grew up in a colder climate. I grew up just outside of Toronto. And so this happened to me a couple times in my childhood, where I'd be getting ready for school the night before, and it's late, and I'm thinking I'm really dreading going to school because either I had a big assignment or a big test or something coming up that I just clearly was not ready for. I just wish I had a little more time. Anyways, I'm exhausted. I go to bed. I wake up the next morning, and lo and behold, the gods have smiled on me, because I look out the window and snow is everywhere. And to enough snow that they actually call snow day, which I do the jig of joy. And the first thing every kid does on snow day is they go back to bed. So I go back to bed, I have my little nap, I wake up, and then I got to enjoy the day, right? Go make some snow angels, go have a snowball fight with my friends, maybe pick up the phone, talk to a buddy of mine, go to a movie that night. And more often than not, 24 hours later, I found myself in the exact same situation. I'm getting ready for school the night before, and I'm dreading going to school because wasn't ready for that test, that project, that assignment, and I just been given the gift. We have all been given the gift of time. COVID-19, yeah, has changed the world, absolutely. But at the end of this, when we are given this break, this step off the rat race, will you look back and say, this was a great gift. This was a wonderful blessing. It's an opportunity to look at things and realign things, reprioritize things for things that are most important to me, or are you going to whine and complain and say, poor me, I'm just a victim? If you're part of a culture, an organizational culture that embraces people, that rewards people, and gives them an opportunity to grow, you look at this as an opportunity and not an obstacle.
Great. Thank you, Sunjay. That's perfect. Could I have you stand by right there? I'm going to bring everybody else back because it's getting time. I'm pretty sure it's going to be time for, yes, another lightning round. Let's get everybody out here. Oh, I hope this works. There's Richard and Jeff.
Still waiting for you to let me in, Jerry. I don't know what I did to upset you. I promise I'll be behaved.
We'll try this again.
That's right. He just took me out. So.
that seems like a reasonable swap to me, Jeff.
Mike, you used more than 3 words. That's what you did. If you want to.
Yeah,
know.
that's
yeah. I'm in the penalty box. Hey,
Yeah.
I can just do audio. Oh, there we go.
You're good.
Hey, look at that.
Absolutely.
I'm back.
Gentlemen, it's time for another lightning round. As you know in the audience, some of your questions that you've been submitting by the Q&A have already been answered. We're going to take a couple more of those as time permits here in a minute, but for now, it's time for the lightning round. Now, I'm going to start by asking each of our speakers in turn, how much weight have you gained since this all began? Mike?
2 pounds. And I've aged 5 years.
5 years. Richard?
Mine's a zero-sum game. I've gained some, but I've lost it all. So now I'm just trying to maintain.
Sunjay?
It's 2 pounds, but it's all hair.
And Jeff?
I took it literally. I thought it was COVID-19.
Oh, you were trying to, all right, I see. Very good. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for that revealing answer.
That was a dad joke, Jeff. Yeah.
Well, he's a dad.
This one is a little more serious. Are you a fan of the daily team huddles in the workplace? Yay or nay? Sunjay?
I say yay as long as people want to do it and it's not forced upon them.
Thank you. Michael?
I say yay, and I think they're so important, I'm in favor of forcing them.
All right, Jeff?
Absolutely, with a purpose. And I think that's a key, an agenda, a purpose, whatever that is, and also make them standing meetings.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Richard?
Well, it's unanimous. I'm going to say yay as well. I agree with Jeff. It's got to be standing. If it's sitting, it's called a meeting, not a huddle. I am for them if they're done right. And I've written a blog post called Huddles or Hurdles, Your Choice. And you can find that at contentedcows.com. Just go to the blog and search on the word huddles, and you'll see my take on what I think doing huddles right means.
Is that a shameless plug or what?
Yes, it was.
It was. Hey, and short and sweet for the huddles, right, gentlemen?
Yeah. Yes.
5 to 10 minutes. That's all you need.
Yep.
We've got a couple more questions here. Name a series, a TV series you have binge watched during your lockdown. Jeff, you're up first.
All American.
Sanjay.
Jack Ryan.
Richard.
I'm watching something called Bad Education. Now, this is not the movie with Hugh Jackman. It's a British sitcom on Netflix. It is awful. It has no redeeming qualities. I do not recommend it. I can't wait for the next episode.
And finally, Mike.
We need to up our humor intake, so Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Very good. How, if at all, do you think workplace culture is going to change when we get back to the new normal? Let's start with you, Mike.
Well, being the hopeless optimist that I am, I would like to think that organizations will rediscover their humanity and put people first and recognize that people aren't their most important resource. They are the resource.
Very good. And I've missed someone. Who did I miss?
All the rest of us.
All the
Go ahead, Richard.
Can I go? Can I go? Yeah, I mean, I think people who have usually worked at home from home but have not worked from home, but now they are having two reactions. One is, I've always wondered what it would be like to work from home, and I kind of like it. Not sure I want to go back. The other reaction is, I've always wondered what it would be like to work at home, and now that I know, get me out of here. So I think there's going to be a hybrid model when we go back, and that's going to affect culture. So the one caution that I would put out there is, if you're going to have some people working from home most of the time and some people almost never working from home, we got to be careful we don't create an us versus them, a different group. We've always had race, gender, generations, ethnicity, those diversity dimensions. Now we're going to have another diversity dimension, and that is the at the office folks versus the remote folks. We got to make sure that we don't have two competing teams.
Sanjay.
Like Mike, being the hopeless pessimist, unfortunately, I don't actually think it changes much. I know right now everything seems crazy and the world will never be the same, but I go back to Columbine, 1996. And after that, kids weren't allowed to wear trench coats and you weren't allowed to wear black and you couldn't wear a hood or a mask. And fast forward, COVID-19 in 2020, and people are wearing masks as they line up to a bank. And so the reason I'm pointing that out is things change, and there's going to be another loophole and another different path we're going to alter, and we're going to adjust accordingly. But we're going to pick up lessons as we move forward. But I don't think that life is going to be altered and it's never going to be the same again.
Very good. And Jeff?
Well, first of all, I'm going to ask the other Jeff Tobes on the screen to mute themselves. And that's why I became the Jeff, because unfortunately we sent out the wrong link to some people. So if you can hear me, I know that one of the Jeff Tobes is not muted. Very quickly, I think that when we get back to the new normal, I don't think it's going to be over. And I think we're thinking, a black and white versus my more creative side. And so I think that vulnerability I talked about before and the creativity, the creative thinking is going to be vital. We don't know what it's going to look like. And once we figure that out, we still have all of this ahead of us, looking through our windshields to see what's coming down the road ahead of us. We need to be more creative.
Very good. We've got one final question, gentlemen. Now, since the name of this webinar is Why Culture Matters Now More Than Ever, each of you, why does culture matter now more than ever? Sanjay.
it's easy to question things when everything's going well. You look at sports teams, and when they're winning, everyone says, "Oh, we're the greatest group of people. We're singing Kumbaya. Everyone loves it. This is fantastic." But when things aren't going well, that's the real test of leadership. That's the real test of culture. So you can pay lip service and say, "Oh, we have a great organizational culture," but now in crunch time, are people rallying behind each other? Are they, do their window of tolerance open up? Are they being supportive, and are they helping each other? So that's why it matters now more than ever, because we're in a crisis situation.
Very good. Now, after Sunjay, let's have Mike, please.
Yeah, similar to what Sunjay said, your values now matter now more than ever, because people are going to be looking at your values and asking that question: are these guys just paying lip service to their values? Or are they standing behind them in a meaningful way? And to me, culture is about community. And when your community has been dispersed the way it has, you have to double down, triple down on your culture to stay connected and strengthen that sense of community.
And Richard.
Culture drives behavior, period. And just like a person, when an organization is under stress, like we are now, we can be more likely to exhibit behavior that doesn't work. But culture provides the foundation, the standard, if you will, that governs how we respond, and regardless of the situation. So when everything is rocking along just fine, culture kind of keeps us on track. But when something rocks our world, when we go through the disruption that we've been through and the transformation that we're still going through, we're even more subject to what our culture tells us to do. So if that culture didn't work well in good times, then it could destroy an organization in times like these. But it's also a chance to fix it. But, and this is the real point, I think, if it's a relatively functional culture in good times, it is critical to protect and nurture that culture, because our culture could be the very thing that sees us through.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen.
I'd like to answer that too, because I don't know what I did to make you angry, Jerry, but you keep skipping me. So I'm going to answer it as well. And mine is very simple. And I think it just encapsulates what everyone else is saying. Culture is a secret sauce. Culture, your climate, what things are like now will serve as a differentiator and give you a competitive advantage in the marketplace.
And I apologize for missing you. I keep having to throw off all of the other Jeffs. It's almost like you have a bowler hat on your head, wandering in and out of the presentation today. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for the lightning round. That was very well done. And now it's time to hear from the audience. Now, we have been collecting all through the presentation in the Q&A area a number of questions. A whole bunch of them, a dozen of those questions have already been answered. So thank you so much for providing written answers to some of these questions. We have time for a few more. And if we don't get to all of these questions, I am sure that we're going to get everyone to submit some questions, and I'm sure we're going to be able to send those out to all the attendees. Can we agree to that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's time for audience questions. The first one I have here is, how do you manage toxicity in the workplace when it comes directly from the top? Anyone?
I would say, I would just say, don't contribute to it. You can't do anything about anybody else. You can only contribute. You can only control what you do. Do not further add to the toxicity.
Thank you, Rick.
I mean, this is another webinar in itself to answer that.
Yeah.
But you have to keep in mind, though, that when you have toxicity from the top, it's a perception. They don't wake up in the morning twisting their mustache going, "Here's my evil plan." What they view as toxicity, what you view as toxicity, they may view as efficiency. And so what we need to understand is, what are their core driving values? Because when we understand what's important to them, we can express to them and what's important to us. For example, organizational culture. You want to get the work done, but when you treat us like dirt, that doesn't actually help. If you want to get the work done and that's your value, treating us like this will actually drive us further. And like I said, that's a very high level answer to the question, but we can go much, much deeper with that.
I want to make sure Jeff gets the time.
I believe it's exactly what Sunjay's saying. And again, I think it's about communication skills. I think that there's a disconnect in communication as well, and seeing the world from their perspective, not yours.
Very good. Mike?
Yeah, it's all about communication, and it's all about using coaching language, yes, even with your boss, even with your senior leadership team. And it's about making them aware of the impact. You really need to, I think, sell it in terms of the cost and the impact of the organization. And don't make it about yourself. Make it about the organization. Make it about your customer service. Make it about the impact it's having on the team and your culture.
Thank you, gentlemen. Let's have another question here. I've inherited a team of approximately 10 who have a past history reputation of being non-engaged, non-productive, generally lazy within the organization. Any ideas on how to overcome the negative perception of this team? Who'd like to start?
I'll go. Buy-in. To me, the biggest piece is when you have that kind of apathy, it's because people feel like they've been done onto, as opposed to having a step in the process. So kind of sit down with them going, what's important to you? What are your objectives? And now all of a sudden it's their objectives and not the ones that have been handed down by management.
I'm going to add to that. I think it's about accountability too. I think the perception is there because the perception is probably also because they're not accountable for their actions and for what they say and do. So I think as a leader, it's your responsibility to figure out who's accountable for what touch point in the organization.
Anyone else?
Yeah, accountability is so important, and it's also about giving them a voice. They need to feel empowered. You look at culture transformation stories. I've never seen one where it didn't involve a massive amount of input from the employees. And I talk about example after example in my culture online training program of these turnarounds, and sometimes with really, really simple processes like the USS Benfold that turned around a horrible, toxic, dysfunctional culture, partly just through one-on-one conversations with every single crew member and asking them 3 dirt simple questions. What's one thing you like about working here? What's one thing you don't like? And what's one thing you'd change? That's it. And they transformed their culture.
Very good. We have time for one more question from the audience. The rest we'll handle through email after the fact. We are here to discuss organizational culture. The members of the panel do not appear or sound to be particularly a diverse group. How do you think what we experience regarding diversity or lack of diversity of mentors, teachers, and leaders makes a difference in our organizational culture?
I'll start then. I think it makes a huge difference. I think it's incredibly important. People need to see themselves in leadership roles. We know from research that the more diversity there is on a team, the more innovative those teams are. Diversity fuels innovation and creativity in teams, whether it's diversity of background, of gender, absolutely critical in my books. And I know—
Mike, I think I was going to ask you, what do you mean by diversity? But you're going to go ahead.
Yeah. So diversity of, if you don't have any diversity, here's the risk, right? Everybody is looking at all your challenges and all your problems from the same perspective. And it's about getting as many different perspectives as you can at the table.
And in terms of, if I can jump on and piggyback off what you're saying, Mike, in terms of diversity, first of all, I'm not old like the other 3 panelists. So there's lots of diversity amongst us here. The other thing, though, I want to point out is this is what we do. Between the 4 of us here, we have over 125 years of experience of working with different organizations. We've done things from, chicken farmers to clown conventions and everything in between. So although we are maybe not be radically diverse, we've seen so much that's out there and learned some best practices and see things that don't work and try to reduce people's learning curve. I mean, that's the whole purpose of what we're trying to do here.
Very good, thanks. That's all the time we have for these questions. We have literally dozens of questions, and we'll field those to each of you so that somehow you all get together and you'll answer those questions, get them out to the entire list of all the attendees today. Yep. Thank you for taking those questions from the audience, gentlemen. Now it's—
And Jerry, we'll try to answer them when we're off screen as well.
Yeah.
Okay, of course. Somehow I know we're going to get answers to all of those. It's time now to turn to speaker-specific questions. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start with Mike. So gentlemen, if I can, I'd like to have you go take a seat while I get Mike here set up. Let's do that. Let's see if this is going to work. Oh, I love it when a plan comes together. Well, Michael, we've got a question for you now. You talk about your 3 R's of humor and stress management. Can you tell us what the 3 R's are and how you would put them to work right now during this challenging situation?
I would be happy to. So my 3 R's of putting humor to work for less stress in the workplace. The first R is relax, or the power of humor to re-energize ourselves. The second R is about how we look at the world. So it's about reframing, using humor to reframe the stuff that is happening to us. And the third R is the power of humor to help us reward and recognize employees, to reward both the positives and the negatives. So let me dive into there, but let me remind you that humor is a triple threat. That's why it's so valuable right now. It changes how we feel about a situation. There's a cognitive shift, so it changes how we think about a situation, and there's a physical response when you laugh. So it's a triple threat, and we need it now more than ever. And look, we know when you immerse a culture with a lot of humor and fun, that employee absenteeism rates go down, that employee turnover rates go down, that communication is better, everything moves in the right direction. So do not be afraid of using humor during these difficult times. I want to challenge you to be even more intentional about it, because people need to laugh. They need the power of humor to be more resilient. So a few things you can do to just help relax your team and re-energize, all sorts of things you can do. Start a humor file, for example, collectively with your team or yourself at an individual level, where you just start collecting the funny stuff you come across, especially the accidentally funny stuff, the unintentionally funny stuff that isn't supposed to be funny, until you kind of pause and look at it in a weird way and realize that's kind of funny. Start a humor inventory. This is a great team exercise to do right now with your team, and ask everybody to share their favorite humor resources, their humor books, their humor sitcoms, and encourage people to watch more humor. It may sound trite, but we know, I talk about this in my book, The Humor Advantage. There is a mountain of research about the power of humor to help us manage stress. Create some fun contests. Now is a perfect time to come up with some fun, goofy contests. Here's a simple one of my clients is doing, is they are having a video contest where team members are creating a 1-minute home movie using just their smartphone to record a video that's very funny, that introduces their home, their family, their pets to the rest of the team. Look for rituals and traditions. They help build culture. They're so important, and there's no end of rituals and traditions you can do. Maybe it's kicking off your week virtually right now with a fun kickoff tradition, or a hump day meeting to help folks get over the hump. Maybe it's celebrating on a Friday afternoon virtually, where everybody shares their 3 wins of the week. Rituals and traditions are so important. And speaking of those, celebrate those offbeat theme days. Now, I put these all on my website, www.mikekerr.com. Every day, for example, today is official No Homework Day and No Diet Day. There is International Talk Like a Pirate Day. There's Wear Your Pajamas to Work Day. There's all these crazy theme days. So celebrate them in some small way, even if you just acknowledge them at the start of a meeting, or put them in your email signature or on your voicemail message. Make up your own theme days. I have one client, I love this because it's so crazy. They do third person Thursdays, where everybody all Thursday talks about themselves in the third person. Mike loves this idea, and Mike thinks you could do this in a meeting, in a virtual meeting. Just have a third person meeting. And speaking of meetings, a Scientific America study found that the most effective meetings are those meetings that have a lot of humor and bantering and joking around in them. People are more creative, they're more honest, they're more open. Bring your humor into your virtual meetings to help you strengthen your meetings and build your culture again. Kick off your meeting with a fun icebreaker. If you go to my website, I have an article on 100+ ideas on how to inject a little bit of fun and motivate virtual teams. So there's all sorts of things you can do there. Have a drinking game where everybody has to take an exaggerated sip of their coffee, water, or tea every time somebody says you're on mute, or every time somebody's dog barks, or have everybody draw a picture another a self-portrait of themselves. That's me. I think it's awesome. So lots of ways to relax. The second R is remembering the power of humor to just reframe our challenges and look at them in a different way. Humor reminds us that stress is in the eye of the beholder, but so is humor, and we have a choice as to how we react to things. So again, turn this into some contests with your team. Create a list, have a contest for the best top 10 great things about this entire situation. Or do the old, this situation is bad, but it could be worse, and then exaggerate how it could be worse to help you find the humor in it and reframe your challenges. And the last R is the power of humor to reward and recognize both the positive and the negatives. So create some fun rewards. Here's some fun ones you could be doing both back at work and especially right now. For example, the virtual bonehead award to whoever most messed up in a virtual meeting or presentation. The ha-ha award to whoever kept everyone laughing during this whole crazy time. The Pundemic award for the best punster out there on your team. The I Got Your Back award for whoever looked out for everyone's safety and mental well-being during this. The Houdini award for whoever magically made a big problem disappear like Houdini. I've got a whole list of these. I will be happy to send them to you if you reach out to me. Thank you, Jerry. Reframe, reward, and relax your way to a saner experience right now.
Well, thank you, Mike. Richard, here's what we have for you, Richard. What do people need in order to be engaged at work? How, if at all, is this different during a crisis? And how, if at all, is this different when leading remotely?
Well, people need a clear sense of mission. And I'm not talking about a mission statement. So please don't just trot out your mission statement and open all your virtual meetings with it. Instead, I love what the late jazz saxophonist Charlie Parker once said about music. He said, if you don't live it, it won't come out of your horn. So the question is, what's coming out of your virtual horn to help define your mission? And it may not come out the same as in your in-person horn. So here's a way to find out what's coming out of your horn. And everybody can do this. It's a two-parter. First of all, I want you to ask yourself this question. What are our top 3 business priorities? Write down your answer. Then I want you to go to 5 or 6 people, virtually with whom you work and ask the same question. What are our top 3 business priorities? And write down their answers. And you're looking for consistency. Do their answers match yours? Do their answers match each other's? Because if you ask 5 people for 3 priorities and you get 15 priorities, and I've seen that happen, you could have some really well-meaning people working really hard at so many different priorities that nothing reaches critical mass. We need to have focus. Make sure people know what the priorities are, and if they don't, help them learn. Secondly, people need a career line of sight. During the first month or so of what we've been going through, people were willing to forget about that for a little bit about their careers. But now that we're starting to figure out more of what's going on and how we're going to be working from now on, they're going to start focusing more on their training and their development. So continue to have career discussions with all of your people, like I know you have been. I know you've been doing that, right? And for goodness sake, let's don't do like we did during the Great Recession and abandon all training and development. We have paid a high price for that. Let's don't do it again. And finally, people need to know how their work matters. The moment anyone begins to entertain the notion that what they do for a living is not very important, they can't possibly be engaged. And working remotely may obscure our view of how our work matters. I've always told clients and audiences, we got to put people in touch with their customers to let them know how what they do impacts your customers. So here's something I heard about from a company in Ohio that manufactures precision measuring devices. Listen to this. So their plant is shut down for right now, but their factory workers are still getting paid. And they're coming in small groups of like 5 people or so to clean and maintain the equipment. And they've set up Zoom meetings with their customers and so that their customers can talk about how they're using these precision devices that these good people are making in the factory and have made in the factory. And one of the things they learned just a couple of weeks ago is that one of their customers is using their products in the manufacture of COVID-19 tests, which are saving lives and helping us move back toward where we'd like to be again. Those people know how their work matters. Find a way for your people to understand how what they do every day makes a difference.
Jerry, I think you might be on mute again.
Well, I'm trying to get all of them. Can I ask you that question again now that I
You.
together?
Yes, we can hear you now.
What strategic direction do you feel organizations and individuals should be approaching with regards to moving business forward during these times? How's that?
Perfect. So one of the main things that I do when I work with organizations is I call it a strength-based approach to leadership. And so essentially what it comes down to is I have a formula I call the 10-80-10 principle that says for any objective you're trying to do within in-house, you have top 10, bottom 10, and majority 80. Top 10 is things that you're already doing, pushing you towards that objective. Bottom 10 are things that you're doing that are pulling you away. And the majority 80 will follow whichever group is more empowered. Quick little example of how this works. If you've ever gone to a musical and ended up giving a standing ovation to a musical that didn't deserve a musical? And most people say, yes, they have. And that's sort of the 10-80-10 principle at work. Basically what happens is you end up sitting next to the lead's mother. So the play finishes. She is what we call top 10. She's elated. This is her little baby. She stands up and starts clapping her hands feverishly. And out of complacency and not to be rude, you as a majority 80, you follow the top 10 because she was more empowered than you. On the flip side, you've probably been in a meeting or at a presentation where the speaker is excruciatingly boring. You'd rather eat your own spleen than listen to him or her talk. And what everyone else is doing is they're having side conversations or they're pulling out their phone and checking their email. And the next thing you realize, you're doing the exact same thing. And there's an example where the bottom 10 is empowered and you as a majority, you follow that. And so the same idea, the same concept works universally with any sort of objective. So what I say is, as a group, you have to be clear as an organization on to what is your desired result. And keep in mind that your desired result will change now than it may have been from 4 weeks ago. Because 4 weeks ago, it may have been about making profit, or it may have been about corporate social responsibility, or it may have been about some sort of objective, and now it may have changed. Now it might be about staying afloat, or now it may be about keeping the workplace, the workers motivated in this new kind of quasi-culture. And so when you're crystal clear on what that objective is, you can then isolate going, what are my top 10? What are my bottom 10? Because when you recognize those, then the formula is really simple. What do I want? Who's my top 10? Who's my bottom 10? Then you spend as much time and resources as you can to neutralize the bottom 10, which means put the minimal amount of time, energy, attention, and thought so it no longer draws resources. And then what you do is you empower the top 10, which is the maximum amount of time, energy, attention, and thought so it no longer draws resources. And using this as a strategic direction, essentially what you're going to find is the top 10 will get empowered. That will create an army for you where the majority 80 will follow. Once you hit that critical mass, that's your top 10 plus your majority 80, the bottom 10 does something quite remarkable. Some of the group goes, wait for me, and they run after the group and they want to be part of it. And the other part kind of goes, oh, this isn't what I signed up for, I'm out of here. And you get natural attrition. So what should you be doing? Be crystal clear what you want. Find out who the top 10 are, empower those, find out who the bottom 10 are, neutralize those, and move your organization forward.
Thank you, Sunjay. That's perfect. And now we're going to bring in Jeff. Jeff, your question is, I understand you've developed 5 principles for leading during turbulent times. What are the top 2 or 3 that you can share with us today?
Well, I'm going to share all 5, Jerry, but I'm going to do it very quickly because I know we're out of time. Thank you to my colleagues who have taken up all my time, but that's okay because I think it's important. Number 1 is be clear, confident, concise in your decision making. Number 2, accept that there's always more than one right answer to every single challenge that your customer internally or externally brings you. Number 3 is be a relationship manager, not a task manager. Right now, it's so vital that we look at the relationships we have with our internal and our external customer. Number 4, and someone mentioned this before, was, I think it was Richard said, collect stories. Be a story collector. Collect and share stories of humor, humanity, generosity right now, where they're not happening in the workplace, they're happening remotely. And number 5, we need to engage our people at a whole new level. Really engage, I believe engagement starts at the bottom and works its way up through an organization. It doesn't come from management down. Want to change the climate in your organization, the culture? Start by engaging your people at a different level.
Very good. Thank you. Now stay right where you are, Jeff. We're going to bring everybody else back because I've got one last question for all of you. Let's make sure we get everybody on the screen. Oh, everybody's there. One of the questions I have, I'm going to ask you for your final question in just a moment, your final thoughts, each of you. But before we do, one of the questions we received was, what is the best way to get a hold of everybody after the event? So we are bringing that up on the screen right now, so everyone can see that. There it is. We have you now over on the side. And so Sunjay, you're going to be doing a strengths-based approach to performance. Richard has a book, Finding Great People. It's the interview one. Hold on. There we go. Jeff, Coloring Outside the Lines. I've got that copy. I love it. And Mike, there's what Mike's going to do. So let me just ask each of you now that we have all of you on the screen, what is your final thought on today's presentation?
I guess we're just jumping in. So let me just say that all of those resources are free. So you can do what it says on the screen and you'll receive those resources. And my final thought is, it just goes to what I was just saying, and that is that culture matters now more than ever. Relationships matter more now than ever. Make sure that you're not only in touch with your team, but you're in touch with your customer as well. And reaching out to them constantly. I will just share a quick story of someone who missed, because of the COVID dilemma, missed their teeth cleaning, and the next day opened their door to find a little box from the dentist with a floss and a toothbrush in it and a note telling them how much they were missed. That's keeping in touch with your customer.
Very good. Richard, why don't you go next?
My final thought is that, a lot of things have changed in the last 6 to 8 weeks, but one thing has not, and that is that creating a focused, engaged, and capably led workforce is one of the best things any organization can do for its bottom line.
Thank you. Mike?
This whole situation has been another reminder, a re-reminder, if you will, of just how important work is in everyone's lives. And I hope everyone remembers that. I stress that in everything I do, that work has an enormous impact on our mental and physical health, on our marriages, on our families, on our kids' lives, on our dogs' lives. It affects our personal growth, our development of human beings. It affects where you live often. And you may have noticed it's just a wee bit of a time sucker. It's the single biggest use of our waking hours in this short journey called life. It is the single biggest use of your talent, your passion, your energy. None of us are going to be sitting on the rocking chair, looking back at our work days, thinking to ourselves, man, I wish I was more of a fun sucker. So let's remember to make the journey fun, to embrace that spirit of fun, to focus on building more humane, people-centered cultures, because work matters.
Can I just interrupt for a second, Jerry? People are asking us to put that other slide back up with the resources.
Well, let's see if we can actually do that.
At minimum, too, maybe we could can we send an email to everyone?
It will also be in the,
Perfect.
email that everyone
will
gets
get a copy of it.
in.
That's fine.
It'll be there.
All right, and my final thoughts. First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who invested the time of being here. Hopefully this was valuable use of your time. So thank you for the questions. Thank you for the challenges and all that stuff. Thank you to the panelists. Especially the young one. He was fantastic. With that said, my final thought is really this: is it an opportunity or a threat? The question I would have for all of you is, personally and professionally, what are you doing with the snow day? We've all been given a great gift, and when you look back at this, are you going to say, "Oh man, I should have," or are you going to embrace this opportunity and go, "Thank you"?
Very good, gentlemen. Thank you so much. And thanks to our audience for joining us today for Why Culture Matters Now More Than Ever. Gentlemen, have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.